All right, so janeandfinch.com covering municipal elections 2010 here in the Jane and Finch Ward 8 community with local councillor Anthony Perruzza. How are you today?
Excellent, Sabrina. I'm happy to be here.
Good. So before we get started, why don't we give our viewers some of the background of who you are and your political career?
Absolutely. Anthony Perruzza. I've lived in York West. I grew up near Weston and Finch. I've lived here for 42, 43 years now of you know, my entire life, I guess, in a sense, in Canada. I went to the local schools, graduate of York University, and I've seen the community grow, change, transform, go through different cycles, and now I have this wonderful opportunity to be able to represent it as the local city councillor, and just having a great time with it, with all of the things that we have on the go.
Right. So being the current councillor, what are some of your successes over your term?
Well, Sabrina, I guess the one big project that we have on the go, which is getting bigger and bigger every day as a file on the desk, is obviously the subway. It's been in the works now for some time, but now it's like so actively on the go. I chair the TTC's working group on the project. The subway is now under construction. The contracts are all out. The station designs are pretty much complete. They're digging the holes where the tunnel boring machines go. All of that activity is on the go. Just got an email yesterday. We're going to have a competition to name the 4 tunnel boring machines. So if anybody from the community has any creative names for them, they're very, very significant machines. They're very big. They're uniquely built for the TTC and for the subway project. They're going to be delivered imminently, and they will go into the ground and start churning away at the soil and bring the subway through the community all the way into Vaughan. So that's exciting. It's big. It's almost $3 billion worth of investment in this area. Investment in jobs, investment in infrastructure, investment in transit, environmentally friendly transit. So it's win, 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 win all over.
Okay. Awesome. So of course, what have been some of your challenges over your term?
Well, as you know, we have a very unique community made up of very many pockets of very diverse and sometimes convergent interests. For example, we have the Jane Finch area. We have an incredible amount of social housing. Next to that, we have a university, a 65,000 people little town that functions as a small town. You know, almost 2,000 buses into that complex on a daily basis. Then we have this tract of land that's an industrial area, a lot of plants, a lot of different needs in that particular area. It creates lots of jobs for the neighborhood and for the city. So when you look at that, and when you look at the vastness of that, and then when you look at sort of on a more micro level at the communities itself, we have a district where over 100 different languages are spoken. You know, you go down any street or you go into any complex, and you find this great variety of people coming from a great range of cultures, and everyone trying as best they can to integrate, to fit in, to coexist. It's a marvel. It really is. It's a wonderful garden of different challenges and different things going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges that sticks out to me that went beyond Ward 8 was around the rebranding. What are your thoughts on where that is right now?
Yeah. Perhaps maybe rebranding is the wrong word. What we're endeavoring to do, and as I mentioned earlier, right at the onset, you know, I grew up in this area. I've lived here for all of the time that I've been in Canada. And I've seen the area go through all of these different transformations. And we have historical names. And one of the things, and in fact, we just started that here at this library, where we've invited people from the neighborhood who have long-standing memory of where this community has evolved from, and hopefully we can map out where the community is going to evolve to rediscover our history, to sort of dust that off, and that's what that is about. It's not about essentially creating a different brand for the area, because people will refer to our neighborhoods the way they've always referred to our neighborhoods. But I want people to know that we also have a history. There's a part of the community that was developed as University Heights, part of the community that was developed as Black Creek, and I want people to be able to have that history and that sense of place, because those names define neighborhoods, and while Jane Finch is often and many times used to map out a neighborhood, there is no real neighborhood that is that we've been able to find on a map anywhere that says this is where Jane Finch, and it seems to have a different boundary depending on who you speak to. And I know that when I went and communicated this to the media, you know, everybody has a different sense of how far the community extends to. So, and that's all we've been trying to do.
All right.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts, or how do you feel the community thinks about your term as the councillor?
Well, I'm hoping that people will see some very positive things. I mean, we've been able to achieve some incredible results. For example, in the last election, one of the things that we talked about was the notion of landlord licensing. We need to find a way to make our rental housing, especially our rental housing, better places to live. And we talked a lot about that, and when we went down to City Hall, obviously you need to convince a whole bunch of other politicians and bureaucrats that this is a worthy initiative. And what we ended up with was a program called MRAP, the Multi-Residential Audit Program, something that didn't exist before, something that was a huge win and is a huge win. And while it's not, it's not, making our housing perfect, it's to some degree making it a lot better than what it used to be. So what that is we now have a dedicated team of inspectors whose sole job function is to inspect and enforce property standards in rental housing, something that didn't exist before. So they've gone through a number of buildings. And one that comes to mind is 2801 Jane Street. It was one of the very first ones that we had audited. And you look at some of the work and some of the things that have been done to those places, it's much better than what it used to be. It's not. I don't think we're where we want this to be, and where we want it. We're at a level that. I don't think we're at a level that we all want, but we're getting there, and we're getting there slowly. And I think that that was a great big win, not just for me, but for all of the people that came down to City Hall with me and to help me out with that project.
Okay, you've been touching on some of the initiatives you're involved in. Is there any highlight that you've missed out that you'd like to share, either currently or in the past?
Well, obviously the subway is very big. The audit program, the inspection programs for rental housing is very, very big as well. We have a very exciting project on Finch Avenue, for example. If the provincial government comes through with its funding, which we all know it will, it's just delayed the project a little bit, and that's I refer to it as a tram line. It's a way of widening Finch Avenue, making it work again, because Finch is now at, during the peak hours at gridlock. We've added a lot of buses on Finch, but these buses are stuck in traffic, full of people. So we need to find a way to make that work. Again, that's a very, very big investment. It's a line that will ultimately run from Yonge Street, the Yonge Street subway, along Finch Avenue, all the way into the airport. It's It will be a way for us to urbanize Finch Avenue, improve it as a street, as an avenue, and better connect us via environmentally friendly transit to the rest of the city.
Okay. Now there's a lot of talks in terms of provincial dollars coming down to TTC and not, as well as the mayor's or one of the candidates for the upcoming for the mayor he's saying around the light rails, some of this is going to create more congestion on the road. How is the new leadership, and I will go back to this question around the mayor, but how would the new leadership affect, in particularly, some of your vision around TTC and urban development here in the area?
You see, for me, it's not about a war on the car or a war on transit or one versus the other. For me, it's about all of these things coexisting together. People will continue to drive their cars. I love driving my car, so I will continue to drive my car. But I also believe we need to have a functioning city, and the way we have a functioning city is we need to have a good, quick, transit that is reliable, that is customer friendly, and all of those things. So, and I see the evolution of that transit, and given that we don't have endless bags of money, I support Transit City. I support the initiative to put these light rail lines on roads. I believe that they can coexist with the car. We can make traffic flow better for the automobile as well as for transit users. I'm a big user of my bicycle, and I think that bicycles and pedestrians and everybody in an urban environment needs to be able to move around and get around. So I don't see one versus the other. I see it all as coexisting together, and we need to find ways to make them coexist together.
All right. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions around just specific issues. So the first one, what are your thoughts on policing?
I think we have a wonderful police force by and large. There's no question that at times there's issues that pop up with policing, and we have to deal with those when they do pop up.
And what are your thoughts on arts and culture in the community?
We have so many festivals and so many different community groups doing so many things, and we are promoters and sponsors of many of them. For example, the ones that quickly come to mind is the Caravan Kids Carnival that we do every summer. So, the Hispanic community puts on a lot of different events that we are a part of. I think it adds to the flavor of the city, and we need to support these things wherever we can. For example, this Hearts Hub that we're in today, that was very much part of a city initiative which we all supported, which I supported as well. The POL funding started by the mayor, and basically this project was community driven, and at the end of the day it resulted in this wonderful facility, which I'm being told is being made very good use of by a lot of folks, and that's what it's about.
Awesome. Yeah. What's your thoughts on economic opportunities within the community?
Well, we have to do all we can to try to generate as many jobs and as many opportunities for as many people as possible. And that's why I spoke earlier about the subway and what that means, and Transit City, for example, what that might mean. And I know that I was part of a group down at the TTC, which added to the Transit City labor force agreement and a component that when Transit City comes online, that local youth, for example, be given priorities in non-skilled job areas, so that the contractors, that the unions are all clear about that, so that we come together and we can make those things happen. And we open up some of those opportunities. It wasn't easy to do. It still needs to be approved by Metrolinx. It's really sad that the provincial government has added this other layer above the TTC now that has to review these things. But we we passed it at the TTC. Hopefully Metrolinx will adopt that, and that will create some opportunities for both local skilled tradespeople as well as local youth who don't have skills but who are looking to acquire skills.
So sitting at some of the tables within the community, the TTC expenditures is a hot topic around securing employment, it being a phased construction project as well as employment opportunities when the system is up and running, drivers and these types of positions. What would be your vision on how Ward 8 Jane and Finch community can secure employment within this upcoming expenditure?
Well, precisely, just the way I described it. We actually at the TTC tried to structure or have structured a labor force agreement where a component of within that labor force agreement, a component of that would be to actually hire local youth for unskilled trades jobs, to give them priority.
So I guess my question then maybe is, how do we guarantee a certain number instead of it being piecemealed, or because it's a unionized environment?
That's actually a way of,
okay.
Precisely, I didn't mean to interject, but it's precisely that. It's, you know, the unions have guarded these fiefdoms. Mm-hmm. They have their members, they have their tradespeople, and their job obviously is to try to get them jobs. Mm-hmm. And they push for these big infrastructure projects on behalf of their memberships, and we all understand that, and that's fine. And as politicians, we look at the project and say, how does this benefit the community? And when we come to those agreements, we proceed with them. But what we've done in this one, is very uniquely, is actually put into the agreement itself that, and we didn't leave it up to sort of this nebulous system that may or may not work at the end of the day. There's actually in that agreement that both the unions and the contractors and everyone else who signs on, if approved by Metrolinx, that a certain number of those positions will go to local people and local youth. Especially the unskilled jobs where where you have people looking to get opportunities and to acquire skills to be able to move on to a skills trade and to be able to move into one of the union jobs. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So it's pending on Metrolinx approval.
Regrettably, the provincial government has added this layer that where Metrolinx is the it didn't used to be this way, not when we actually started the process, but it is now, because the provincial government obviously is the one that he who pays the piper calls the tune, and they're calling the tune on this one. So Metrolinx has to come on. But I think that with if we stay after it, I think that they will, because it makes sense.
Okay. What are your thoughts around the school closures? Jane and Finch was one of the communities that was victorious around keeping our schools open. But what was your thoughts throughout the process, and even the possibility of them coming back?
Yeah. Well, you know what? All of our schools, our community centers, our parks, they're, from my perspective, they're community assets that need to stay within community control. We need to, keep the schools open. We need to keep as many of them open as we can. I was part of that process. I spoke, when before the ARC committee made their decision, and basically the essence of my comments were that any move to close schools in this area would be short-sighted. Because there's a transformation that's happening within the community itself. There's a lot of younger people moving in, a lot of people with kids. I believe that the schools will fill up again with students, so we need to keep them open, because they will be continued to be used as schools for growing populations of kids. I believe that the school number hasn't done its math well, and I think that they're wrong. They're going to be proven wrong ultimately.
Okay. What are your thoughts on social housing?
Well, we have a great deal of it, and we have some challenges that are facing us with our housing, and we need to find a way to rehabilitate it. A lot of the housing in this area was built 30, 35, 40, and 45 years ago. And everyone knows, you know, like it's like driving a car. You know, you put 200, 300, 400,000 kilometers on your car. At some point, the car is going to break down, and then a further point beyond that, it doesn't, you know, for some, it doesn't become cost effective anymore to just keep sort of rehabilitating the same car and pushing it along. So, and we need to find ways to rehabilitate our social housing, renew it in a way that is going to be long-lasting, and we need to work very hard to be able to do that. Because otherwise, we have situations now. For example, I can think of Shoreham Court, where we have a number of units that are basically sitting empty. We have a huge waiting list of people trying to get into housing, but we have housing that's crumbling. It's uninhabitable, and there aren't the resources to be able to repair them to the level where you can move people back in.
Right. Gentrification. So we know that it's coming to the Jane and Finch community. What are your thoughts on this upcoming development that's not really surfaced, really? It's not really a buzz in the community, but we know that some know it's happening soon. So what's your thoughts?
Well, I'm not sure that you know, dividing communities is the way to go, or dividing people is the way to go. My modus operandi is to try to bring people together. You need to, you know, build bridges between people and not find a way to sort of, you know, to divide them, because that's counterproductive. That's counterproductive to community building. I'm hoping that doesn't happen, and I know that if I continue to be the councillor in this area, I will continue to bring people together. You know, we've done we're just talking about, for example, social housing, and the whole campaign about reclaiming spaces. I know, for example, I personally went out and planted flowers and planted trees and helped you know, rehabilitate some of our housing, because you need people to sort of come back out into those spaces and reclaim them for themselves, and that's how you make communities more livable. That's how you bring you know, you move people around in neighborhoods. We organized walks, and you know, so you can look at places and say, this is where this comes from, and this is how we all coexist together. So it's about bringing people together. It's not about you know, segregating.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's been buzz for a while around the relocation of the hospital closing. What are your thoughts, or is there any clarity around that issue?
Well, you know, this has been a long-standing issue. You know, there was an opportunity some years back, some 12 years ago, from my recollection, on where the hospital actually had plans to build an 8-story addition to the front of the Finch site, for example. That didn't occur for whatever reason, and I'm not going to get into the politics of that, but obviously the hospital and the provincial government and the ministers and so on, and all of these players in healthcare, they've obviously drafted a plan to build a new hospital within this area that they're calling a provincial precinct. For example, they're moving the coroner's office from downtown to the Ministry of Transportation lands at Keelan Wilson. They're going to build a forensics lab right next to the coroner's office, and then they're intending to build a 640 or 670 bed hospital right next to that, where each and every bed will have its own room, you know, state of the art, and you know, all the modern technology one could ask for. So that is a good thing. We've been waiting. We've been woefully underserviced for quite some time, because the populations in these areas have ballooned out, have exploded, and the hospital has basically stayed the same. It hasn't grown. In fact, if anything, it's shrunk, because, you know, they closed Northwestern General on Keele Street, so that took away a hospital for the community. So from that perspective, I think that's good. But what we also need to do is find a way to keep the Finch Hospital open. We have the government has committed to doing so. The Minister of Health has committed to doing so. that the ambulatory emergency functions would stay open. There would be some beds open associated with that. And what we've been told, what I've been told, is that the community is going to get to participate and play a role in determining what happens with the rest of the hospital. So the way they've been describing is if someone goes to the Finch site into the emergency room, once they have been, and if they have to stay overnight, or if they have to be hospitalized in any way, once they are stabilized, then they're moved to the new hospital. If they can't be moved, then there will be a bed at the hospital to be able to take care of them until they can be. So I think that's good. But the important thing is we need to make sure that this hospital, especially the emergency functions, stay here, stay locals in the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So poverty, the disparity between rich and poor is growing. If we compare it, the community from the 70s to now, it's only getting worse. There's cutbacks all over the place. What are your thoughts around the issue of poverty? So we're talking about childcare, we're talking about the special diet cuts, we're talking about housing, we're talking about...
There's no question that every time the governments talk about withdrawing support, and especially in the social service areas, they create a greater divide between the haves and the have-nots, and that's why we need to stay after it. We need to stay after the government to make sure that they continue to make the investments that they need to make in childcare, that they continue to make the investments in providing adequate support to people that need them.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if this is true yet, but I've heard that there was a letter sent out to the councillors and the candidates around the issue of poverty, and a commitment from the councillor. Was that received by your office?
I don't believe we've gotten that
No?
yet.
Okay.
And if we've received it, it hasn't been brought to my attention yet.
Okay. All right. So what's your vision of Jane and Finch, future vision of Jane and Finch, Ward 8?
Well, I think in the bigger scheme of things, we are geographically positioned to be the center of the GTA. I believe this. I believe that in time, 5, 10, 15 years, that will happen. Why do I say that? Because if you look at our area, we are, we have Highway 400 on the west, 401 to the south, 407 basically to the north, the new subway line that is coming up Keele Street that will head into Vaughan, the new Finch LRT that will tread, sort of across the ward along Finch Avenue. We have York University that once the subway gets to York, there will be growth. The university has put in an application to expand its medical school, for example. Mm-hmm. Next week we will be opening a new research facility that is opening up there as well. They have a research park. There's a plant that's going to be locating at the end of Pond Road on the other side of Keele Street, a plant called Apollo, $25 million investment, 400 jobs into high-end cosmetics. So if those things continue to take hold, and you look at us, where we are geographically, I think that it's a given. We become the gateway between Toronto and the 905. So we have this incredible potential to be just that, to be what I believe to be the future center of the Greater Toronto area.
Okay. Awesome.
But we need to know how to do it, and we need to know how to do it well.
Mm-hmm. All right. I know throughout the interview, I'm sure we touched on your platform. Is there anything you'd like to share in addition to some of the stuff that we've been talking about, specific pieces around your platform?
Well, we still need to continue to stay after it. We need to do more to clean up our housing. There is no question. while our inspection program is working, it needs to be expanded, it needs to be improved, and we need to move closer towards a form of landlord licensing in order to get that done. We need to find a way of being able to revive a lot of our social housing. We're making substantial investments for the first time in it. But we need to go further with that, because as every year goes by, the clock ticks on, foundations that were built 40 and 45 years ago, which need to be renewed. So there's some exciting challenges ahead. There's no question about that. There's an incredible social need in the area as well. So we look forward to all of those challenges and to the opportunity to be able to make our community better, safer, stronger.
All right. We talked about schools, in particular the Save Our Schools campaign. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on Trustee? Are you backing up any particular trustee, or
well,
and why?
I'm hoping that that for the public school board, Stephanie Payne gets re-elected. I think she went through a bit of ordeal with the schools. Mm-hmm. She clearly, at the end, understood where the community was at with that issue, and I know that she will continue to be on the side of the community as well. And for the Catholic board, Tom Rakosovich, someone who I've known for a very long time, whose judgment, commitment, and abilities I've come to respect a great deal, and his ability to get done is absolutely remarkable. And I think that community would be well served to elect Tom Rakosovich Catholic School Trustee. So I'm hoping that with the two of them and with my re-election, that we put together a very, very formidable team for this area. All
right. Next one, the mayor. Are you willing to share who you're backing up or who you'd like to see?
Well, I've been very clear and very candid. I support Joe Pantalone, a longtime friend and colleague at City Hall. I believe Joe has the experience and he has the the wherewithal to be the kind of mayor that will continue to grow the city, the kind of mayor that understands the needs of the community as well. So I'm hoping that when people get over the notion of wanting to punish Miller, and since Miller is no longer in the election, that when they look at all of the candidates and look closely at the platforms of the candidates, that they will choose the candidate whom they will believe will continue to grow our city in the way that it needs to continue to grow, because we all share in growth. But if let's leave it at that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Any words you'd like to share to your constituency on now or for election day, messages to take with you when you go vote?
Well, first of all, I'm hoping that people take the time and go out and vote. That's really, really big. That's a big challenge in this area. I think that just, get up on election day and go vote. I'm hoping that you vote for Anthony Perruzza, but even more importantly than that, just exercise your right to vote. Have a say. Your voice is going to mean something at the end of the day. It's absolutely not true that your vote doesn't count. Every single vote is counted on election day, and the individual who gets the greatest number of votes is the person that ends up being your representative at City Hall. So that's message number one, and message number two, I'm hoping that people pay close attention to the election. I hope that people take a look at our record, take a look at some of the things that we've been trying to do in the way that we have been trying to do it, and I'm hoping that they will be able to support Anthony Perruzza for City Council in this election.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for your time today. It's a great interview. Thanks.
Yeah, okay.